Hey, this is Tim Charles from Obliviscaris, and you are watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey everyone, it's Richard Metalfan here, bringing you guys another 2023 album review, part 2. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be talking about the new album from Obliviscaris entitled Exul, which is out now under Season of Mist Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Obliviscaris, they're a kind of a progressive melodic death metal or extreme metal, whatever genre you want to put them in the periodic table of metal subgenres. Hailing all the way from Melbourne, Australia. These guys have been around since 2003, like I mentioned in the August Burns Red review that I just posted. Said that these guys have now been around for 20 years, but it wasn't until I discovered Obliviscaris probably late 2015, early 2016. I saw a buddy of mine was into them. I went and checked them out, dug what I heard, and I've been a fan of them since. I've seen these guys 4 times. First saw them open up for Cradle of Filth at the old Masquerade back in 2016. Ever since then, I've been a fan of the band. This, of course, is the band's 4th full-length album, and this follows up their previous album, which came out in 2017, entitled Earn. And with this album, they've pretty much had come a long way from there. This album took a long time. And in fact, the first started making this album like late 2019, early 2020, in March of that year, when, of course, their former drummer, Dan Presslin, laid down the drums in Nashville, and then the pandemic happened, and then luckily made it back to Australia before the country locked down. But then, of course, that pretty much shut everything down. It wasn't until they spent took a next couple of years to just stop, to break from it, and then it wasn't until the last year or so they started making the album. And of course, now here we are with album number 4. And I've always think this is pretty much like a new start for Obliviscaris in a way. I feel like they've come a long way, especially with the whole pandemic and everything. Let's just talk about the vocals from here, from Tim Charles and Zaynor. Both of their vocals are really just complement each other, with Tim sort of doing the clean vocals. Pretty much has a lot of emotion and power to it, and Zen's screamings just really just contrast with Tim's. And I think the clean vocals really have emphasize something that the harsh vocals don't, and vice versa. I remember hearing one friend that interviewed Tim and just talk about that. And I just think that both vocalists just really great well and just shine really well. The guitar work on this album is pretty tight. Matt Clavins and Benjamin Bardet both come up with some really great riffs, and just the riffing on here is pretty tight and intricate. And of course, I mentioned I also forget the violin from Tim playing just really showcases another great layer of emotion and a lot of depth to the songs. The bass playing on this album is pretty audible. This is the first album with their current bassist, Martino Galatoni, who's from Italy. He pretty much laid down some really sick bass lines. And drumming-wise, of course, this is the last album with the longtime drummer, Dan Presslin. Because, like I mentioned, he laid down the drums for this album, but then left the band early last year. But yeah, and I think he did just a really great job. I mean, they could have got somebody else to redo the drums, but I do give them respect that he actually kept his drumming tracks on this album. So without further ado, and we're pretty much almost 4 minutes in, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is of course the first single from the album, Equus, which is a bold move to start off the album with a 12-minute long song. And this pretty much doesn't set the pace of what's to come as much as it pretty much draws you in and immerses you. And there's so much going on within the first beat of the drum, and it just comes together with a very great approach. Just the thunderous drums and bass leading to a more modern thrash riff, and then Tim's violins and soothing clean vocals just come in, and the song rolls really in, and it raises you and pretty much engulfs you and rounds you all itself out with a haunting dual vocals that overlap with the violin guitar. And I think it's a really great way to start off this album. Moving on into Misery Chord 1, As the Flesh Falls, starts off with a really great bass line from Martino, and the bass playing on here is really a display and has genuinely impressive throughout. And if this is a more up-tempo number, that has like the subtlety of a nuclear explosion. And about halfway through, there's like a breakdown, which almost kind of reminds me a little bit of like Master of Puppet. It's from by Metallica, and the violin just acts like a bridge between the first part of Misericord and then going into the next song, Misericord 2, Anatomy of Quiescence. And it said everything here is reined into what it sounds like just thrashing double kicks, and just some really great violin parts, and makes way for Benji come up with some really great guitar riffs, which pulls some true 7-string heroics. And collectively, the pairs of songs that are coming in at nearly 17 minutes, which is quite an undertaking itself, but the music of this caliber is nothing to be trifled with. Moving on to Suspire. Now this pretty much eases us into the second half of this album, and the energy and pace quickly ascends, preparing itself to destroy. And this is pretty much the heaviest and most aggressive moments right here on this album. Zen pretty much unleashes hell on this track, and the rest of Nail just throw everything they have here, and Tim offers some really great reprieve. Even I feel like Zen really destroys it on this one. Next up is Growl, which is the second single from this album, and this song is an absolute monster. The lads really pull an emotional momentum throughout this whole album, and the really great delivery that the band has is just amazing. Zen's vocals, which counters Tim's, are really perfectly, and the two are completely different vocalists, both haunting in their own way, and the pairs layering overlapping vocals anchor each other with a beautiful display of between the beauty and the horror. Individually they're brilliant, but when you combine this to a song like Growl, and even so more in the opening track Equus, and that's pretty much where they're at their finest. And then we close things out with Ahedonia, which I think is a really great way to end this album, which has Tim Charles turn to, I can't even talk, his turn to rip on this song. His beautiful vocals are complementing with his violin playing, and this song is a different beast than on the rest of this album, but it's just the moving pace is just a great way to finish this emotional ride. Now overall, Exul by Obliviscaris is elegant, brutal, and just drenched in despair, and this is a album is just really great from beginning to end. It's just a beautiful album. It's filled to the brim with heartbreak and just every kind of emotion you can feel from this album. So overall, well, if I were to give this album a score, I'm going to give Exul by Obliviscaris a solid 8.5 out of 10. So yep, that's my review of the new Obliviscaris album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.